Okay, so you know how you sent in that request to unpack the 1982 Cat People,
Yeah, I remember that one.
directed by Paul Schrader?
Right, that's the one.
We dove into a review of the movie. Looked at the details, the synopsis, what the critics were saying.
A whole lot to unpack there.
Right. It's like this whole erotic horror fairy tale thing going on.
Interesting combo.
Right. But who has time to wade through all that analysis?
Not me.
Exactly. So our mission today, should we choose to accept it, is to give you the core insights.
Love it. Let's get to the heart of it.
Exactly. What makes this remake so different? What makes it more than just another horror flick? And why should we still care about it today?
Just glancing at the review, what really jumps out at me is Paul Schrader.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we know him for dramas like American Gigolo, Mishima, those kinds of films. Stepping into horror, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's not your typical horror director. It's like he's bringing a whole different sensibility to the genre.
Exactly. Right away, you get the feeling this isn't going to be your standard jump scare fest.
Right. Forget the typical horror tropes. The review describes it as this, like stylish and sensual remake, a dreamlike erotic horror.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
And it's Schrader, of all people, taking on this 1942 classic.
Now, that's what I call a reimagining.
Right. So, given Schrader's background with these really character-driven stories, like how does that change how we see a horror movie like this?
Well, if you look at his films, there's this recurring fascination with isolation, with guilt, with inner turmoil.
Yeah, definitely.
So even in a horror setting, I think he's probably going to zero in on what's going on inside the characters.
More like internal monsters than the external ones.
Yeah, exactly. And when you throw in those descriptions, dreamlike, erotic horror, it's like a signal flare.
Oh, yeah.
We're probably going to see a heavy emphasis on atmosphere, on those subconscious fears bubbling up to the surface.
So let's dive into the actual story. At the heart of it, we have Irena Gallier. She's played by Nastassja Kinski.
Always a good start.
She arrives in New Orleans and stumbles upon this unique family legacy.
Let me guess. Family reunions are a bit tense.
A little. Turns out, she and her brother Paul, played by Malcolm McDowell, are descendants of shapeshifters.
Shapeshifters. That's cool. What do they turn into?
Black Panthers.
Whoa! Black Panthers. Nice.
But here's where things take a wild turn.
Okay, lay it on me.
They have to kill someone to change back to human form.
Yikes. Well, that adds a layer of complexity.
Right. It's not your everyday family secret.
Not exactly something you bring up over dinner.
Exactly. So the review really emphasizes Irena's central conflict here. She's going through this sexual awakening, right? But at the same time, she's dealing with these primal urges that are tied to it.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, it gets complicated. She gets involved with Oliver, a zoologist played by John Hurd, who represents his more normal life.
Right, so we have this kind of normal versus wild dichotomy at play.
Exactly. But the review stresses that, her growing passion could unleash something way more dangerous than simple desire. It's described as this, blend of gothic horror, eroticism, even mythological symbolism. And it's all aiming for this, hypnotic, moody feel. The review even calls it a meditation on the animal within.
So the romantic relationship isn't just a side story, it's intertwined with the hoary itself.
Right. The danger isn't some external force, it's something within her.
That's interesting. It makes you think about the darker impulses that might lie dormant in all of us.
And the review makes it clear that, this isn't your typical horror plot, it's more like a fever dream. It emphasizes emotion, mood, symbolism over constant jump scares.
Yeah, more of a slow burn than an explosion.
Right. The core themes they identify are sexuality, repression, transformation, with the supernatural elements acting as metaphors for those ideas.
So it's not about the literal monsters, but the metaphorical ones.
Right. And the mythology itself is described as ambiguous and surreal. They hint at these ancient rituals, panther gods, primal instincts passed down through generations. And the pacing is another thing that gets highlighted. It's described as languid and deliberate, almost mirroring Irena's internal struggle.
So it's about that fine line between pleasure and danger.
Exactly. It's like love can be both a savior and a destroyer. And the review keeps using this fever dream description.
Yeah, it's definitely setting a specific tone.
Right. So what do you think that suggests about how the story unfolds for us, the viewers?
Well, to me, fever dream implies a narrative that maybe prioritizes emotional logic, those subconscious anxieties we all have.
As opposed to a clear-cut plot.
Yeah, and keeping the mythology ambiguous is key. By not spelling everything out, the film maintains this air of mystery. It invites you to come up with your own interpretation.
It keeps you thinking.
Exactly. And that deliberate pacing allows us to really get into Irena's head, experience her internal conflict, that slow, unsettling buildup of her transformation.
So shifting gears to the characters themselves. Nastassja Kinski as Irena.
Oh, she's amazing.
The review calls her performance magnetic. She's somehow both innocent and enigmatic.
Yeah.
It makes her journey feel, like, tragic and mythic.
I can see that.
Then you have McDowell as Paul.
Perfect casting.
He brings this unhinged menace that really cranks up the dread.
Oh, he's so good at that.
Right. John Hurt's character, Oliver, is described as quietly effective. Maybe he's too grounded in normalcy to really understand Irena's wilder side.
Interesting contrast.
And then there's Annette O'Toole as Alice, who adds another layer of tension to the whole love triangle thing. But the most compelling part seems to be Irena's journey of self-acceptance.
Not a descent into madness, but an embrace of her true self.
Exactly. So it seems like the casting was really important to bring those ideas to life.
Absolutely. Kinski, with that ethereal beauty and vulnerability, she embodies Irena's duality perfectly.
Yeah, and McDowell, with his history of playing those intense, often unsettling characters.
He's just perfect for the more animalistic, primal side of their shared heritage.
And Hurd, with his understated normalcy, makes Irena's otherness stand out even more.
It highlights how she doesn't quite fit in.
Right. And O'Toole adds complexity, exploring the difficulties of truly connecting with another person.
And framing Irena's arc as one of acceptance, rather than a descent into madness, adds so much depth to the exploration of identity. It's not about losing herself, but finding herself.
Now let's talk visuals. This film is apparently stunning to look at. The review praises John Bailey's cinematography.
Oh, he's great.
It uses all these rich reds, deep shadows, glowing oranges.
They're very evocative.
Right. It creates this atmosphere of otherworldly eroticism and danger. And, of course, you have the New Orleans setting.
Perfect backdrop.
Right. Lush, humid, almost decaying.
Okay.
Adds to the whole mystique. The review also points out these deliberate visual metaphors.
Like what?
Cages, mirrors, blood, water, and, of course, cats. They're all playing with these ideas of duality and desire.
I like that. Using visuals to tell a deeper story.
And apparently, every frame feels intentional and sensual. It's like the film's visual language is as important as the story itself.
Oh, absolutely. Color, shadow, composition.
Right.
They can be so powerful in setting the mood, foreshadowing what's to come.
And when you talk about otherworldly eroticism and danger, it feels like they're blurring the lines between beauty and something unsettling.
Exactly. And New Orleans, with its history, its atmosphere, it's the perfect visual counterpart to the story's themes.
And using visual metaphors like that encourages us to look beyond the surface, to engage with the symbolism and think about what it all means.
Every frame feels intentional. That tells you the director had a clear vision for what he wanted to create.
And we can't forget about the sound design and the score.
Oh yeah, that's huge in horror.
Right. Giorgio Moroder's synth-heavy score is described as haunting, hypnotic, dripping with tension.
I love Moroder.
Right. But here's a little detail you might like. They use David Bowie's Cat People, Putting Out Fire, twice.
No way. That's awesome.
To chilling and electrifying effect. The review calls it one of the best examples of a needle drop in horror history.
So using a well-known song at just the right moment to really amp up the impact.
Exactly. And the overall sound design prioritizes atmosphere over those sudden scares.
Mm-hmm.
You know, low growls, silences, this constant feeling of anticipation.
It's amazing how much sound can shape a film's impact, especially in horror.
Right.
It can really get under your skin. And what's so cool here is how they blend Moroder's electronic score, which was very contemporary for the time,
Right.
with those classic horror sounds.
Like the growls and the silence.
Yeah, exactly. That combination probably contributes a lot to the film's unique atmosphere.
And then, of course, that strategic use of Bowie's song. It's not just background music. It's a key part of the storytelling.
The way it's described, a synth-laced eruption of tragedy and ecstasy, it sounds amazing.
Right. And that focus on atmosphere rather than jump scares, it fits perfectly with how the film is described as a fever dream or a sensual nightmare.
It's all about mood and unease.
Okay, so let's dive deeper into the themes. Schrader's known for exploring repression, guilt, identity. And in this film, he really digs into the psychosexual elements of the original story.
Sounds like he's going for something more complex than your average monster movie.
Right. One of the key themes is the link between sexual awakening and fear. Like passion triggers transformation, making sex both terrifying and sacred at the same time.
That's a powerful idea.
Right. And then there's this exploration of the duality of human and animal, that constant tension between our instincts and our morality. But it goes beyond just the physical shape-shifting.
Right, it's about something deeper within us.
Exactly. And of course, there's this theme of loneliness and otherness, with both Irena and Paul as outsiders. They're trapped by their nature and isolated from everyone else.
That feeling of not belonging is something a lot of people can relate to.
The review sums it up perfectly, calling it Beauty and the Beast reimagined as this erotic horror fairy tale for adults. But this time, the beast has no interest in being tamed.
It flips the script on the traditional narrative.
And if you think about the societal anxieties around sexuality in the early 80s,
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other layer.
these themes become even more potent.
Like the connection between sexual awakening and danger, it reflects real cultural tensions of the time.
Right. The duality of human-animal is timeless, though. It's this exploration of those contradictions within ourselves.
That constant push and pull between our primal instincts and what society expects of us.
And the theme of loneliness and otherness, well, that's something that resonates across generations.
That longing for connection, for acceptance, it's universal.
And the way the review frames it as an erotic horror fairy tale.
It perfectly captures that blend of fantasy and mature themes.
Now, of course, no film is perfect. The review does point out some criticisms. They say the pacing is deliberately slow.
Which could be a turnoff for some viewers.
Right, especially those who are looking for, like, instant gratification.
Some people want those quick stares.
Exactly. And then there's the mix of eroticism and horror.
Tricky territory.
Right. The review acknowledges that it might feel exploitative to some viewers.
It's a fine line to walk.
And the symbolism is described as thick, meaning it might not all connect or could feel a bit forced.
Like they're trying too hard to be deep.
Yeah, more arty than meaningful in some spots. And apparently, some of the supporting characters aren't as well developed as Irena and Paul.
Which is a common criticism when a film focuses heavily on the protagonist's internal journey.
Right. It's like there's only so much time to develop everyone.
And sometimes you have to make choices.
But despite those criticisms, the review highlights some truly memorable moments.
Like what?
The transformation scene in the cage.
Yo, I bet that's intense.
It's called pure erotic horror brilliance. And there's this swimming pool scene, which is apparently a nod to the original film,
Nice.
and the use of Bowie's song in the finale.
That's gotta be amazing.
It's described as this synth-laced eruption of tragedy and ecstasy. And of course, Nastassja Kinski's performance throughout the film is called ethereal, haunted, unforgettable. It sounds like those moments are where the film's vision really shines.
Yeah, they crystallize what the film is trying to do. That description of the transformation scene, pure erotic horror brilliance, suggests a moment that perfectly encapsulates those core themes.
Yeah, like it all comes together.
And the nod to the original film, that's a nice touch. It shows respect for its cinematic roots while still forging its own path.
Right, it's not just a cheap imitation.
And that use of Bowie's song, it sounds like a textbook example of how to use music to elevate a scene.
And the consistent praise for Kinski's performance.
It highlights how important she is to grounding those abstract elements.
Bringing that emotional reality to it all.
Exactly.
So to sum it all up, what does this review tell us about cat people? The conclusion is that it's less a horror movie and more a sensual nightmare. It's this story of transformation and temptation that lingers like a fever dream.
Which makes sense given everything we've talked about.
Right. It's flawed, yes, but also bold, beautiful, and unlike anything else from that era. They recommend it for people who prefer their monsters metaphorical, their scares psychosexual, their horror stylish and atmospheric. The final rating is an 8 out of 10.
Not bad.
The review calls it a haunting, hypnotic blend of eroticism and horror. It's like an art house take on a B-movie premise, elevated by Kinski's performance and that rich sensory experience.
So it's definitely aiming for something more than cheap thrills.
Right. It's a film that wants to make you feel something, to stay with you after it's over.
Whether you love it or hate it, it's clearly a film that leaves an impression.
So after taking this deep dive into the review of Cat People, you should have a good understanding of what sets this film apart. It's not just about a woman turning into a panther. It's about these complex themes of sexuality, identity, and those animalistic impulses within us.
Wrapped in a visually stunning and sonically unique package.
This review paints a picture of a film that's more interested in mood and metaphor than predictable scares. Maybe that's what you're looking for. horror that goes beyond the surface.
Horror that makes you think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So has this exploration made you curious to experience this sensual nightmare yourself?
Yeah.
Do you think the boldness and beauty outweigh those potential flaws? What parts of this interpretation of the cat people myth really resonated with you?
Definitely food for thought.
Right.
A lot to consider there.